Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed Khan. Today we have a very important topic to discuss and a very bitter one as well. We finally now have a suspect in custody who has been apprehended for the brutal murder and rape of the poor child Zainab. We're talking about the aftermath of that suspect being apprehended and what is the problem that ails our society as a whole. Because every day we see these cases increasing and there seems to be no end in sight. So let's begin this discussion. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me today, first of all, we have Sundas Malik. She is a legal expert. We'll talk about the legal aspects of this case. And we have Afshan Tehseen with us, who is a child rights activist. And along with her, we have Manizeh Bano, who is the executive director of Sahil, a non-governmental organization working for the betterment of the people. Thank you very much, ladies, for being here. First of all, let's talk about the legalities of this case and this clarion call for people asking that culprit to be hanged publicly. How important do you think this aspect is in our society? People like Malik, an sitting senator, and people like Mr. Shehbaz Sharif also said if it were up to them, they would lynch the man or have him hung publicly. Do you think that is the right approach to take? And what would the legal aspects say about this?
Well, I believe that laws are created in order to de-radicalize and to civilize a society. Because what our ministers and our former ministers and senators are currently saying is something which will not only create a lot of havoc in our society, because it will give the common people a reason and a legitimate reason saying that their own ministers are calling for such lynchings and murders to come into the streets and create more havoc for the civil society. And also it will not leave a good precedence for, of course, our society as a whole, where Pakistan is being shown to the world as a society which is not tolerant enough, which is not thoughtful enough in their actions and in their reactions. So rather than calling for such sort of lynching and murder, I think we sort of need to have a self-cathartic moment and see why this whole thing has come to being in the first place and why it has led to such an extreme where people have had to come on the streets. People should not come on the streets where the law and the policing is efficient and also helping the people. So rather than calling for such, I think, radical actions, the politicians and also the clergy should call for people to think for themselves why this is happening and how to curtail it properly from the society.
Okay, Madam Afshan, when we talk about it even from a scientific point of view, do you think that over the years many researches have taken place publicly hanging people for crimes committed? Is it an effective deterrent for other people to not commit those crimes, because the statistics prove otherwise?
Definitely, that is the right way to deal with such situations. We always have to see these things in terms of causes. What are all those causes, how they have been dealt with, and how we can, eradicate such things in our society. If you really see this case, this is just one of the manifestations which clearly tells you absence of any system in Pakistan, let's say child protection system. It happens, it doesn't happen in Pakistan, it happens all over the world, but in other countries there are systems to deal with it. In Pakistan, you just see single standalone cases and revolve your energies around it, and after some time it is a past story. That's one of my concerns, why we are just dealing with this Zainab and the criminal. Why don't we talk about how we can deal with prevention in future, what type of systems we require in Pakistan, how these politicians, duty bearer, these concerned people will take it forward and have something on the ground so that in future we can avoid such incidences. Just hanging one person is not a case, because we hang many terrorists in our terrorist courts, and many such criminals are dealt with even worse ways of punishment, but that is not the right way of dealing with these things. And another thing, why we are diverting and converging and wasting our energy just around one case. This is sad that it happened to Zainab, but at the same time it opened many such avenues for us to think, to ponder what to do, because you know, Zainab's case is not the only case. Every day it is happening in Pakistan. It's somehow by good luck, by chance, by having some influence of that family, it came to the media. So due to having pressure of media, social media, the concerned authorities took notice of it and now they are dealing with it. But we have to see that, you know, the unreported cases in Pakistan every day happening, and they are just not being brought to the surface, to the, you know, media and other places, because it's a social stigma in Pakistan. People have to save their respects, their, you know, image in society. They don't want to talk about it. Thanks to the media, and now slowly, gradually people have started coming up. But then if, say, there's a society which is little bit mobilized and they talk about it, but where to go? How to deal with such cases is, just imagine, it's been 1992 when Pakistan was, you know, ratified Convention on the Rights of Child, CRC. It's been 30 years after, you know, since there is not even one proper legislation. There was just one child protection law, you know, enacted in 2016, yes. But this is federal. And then when they make such thing, they say it's federal, or now all the provinces are after 18th Amendment independent, so they have to do legislation, so they also take cover. There was just one and another advancement, this criminal law second amendment in 2016, and that was also, you know, little bit I must say a move in it due to this Kasoor case. And then when that thing settled down, things came to a standstill. Nothing is done, believe me. That's why I was just sitting on some TV channel and I was talking about, after this incident, I was watching our assembly politician leaders. Everyone was from all the parties, from PTI, from PPP, from the religious parties, and, you know, the Noon League. Everyone was making very emotional speeches about it, and everybody was weeping also. But none of the people technically came up with recommendations, with solutions, even one pager. Okay, this is it, this is what we want, this is an action plan, this is town bound, this is budgeted, this is what we want for Pakistan, for our kids. But nothing happened. And same, take the case of APS children. So now what we want to, you know, focus on this thing through this media. Okay, all the public, please raise awareness, talk about it, put pressure, but at the same time ask for, demand for a system in place, and give them time frame. Because if we can't catch criminal, that is one aspect. But what the concerned duty bearers, the government has done over the past 5 years, Kasoor is one such place where since 2009 these type of cases are happening. Thousands of children have been you know, sexually abused. Even in these past year, I was just reading some report, only in Punjab 652 children are missing. Nobody wants to talk about it. Only, you know, these type of cases happen when there is some evidence. As per law, if children under 12, if they are abducted and they are missing, police never register a case as per Penal Code of Pakistan until there is some evidence. And besides, they don't want to register it because then they are under pressure. They will never register. So we are talking about registered cases. Think about the unregistered cases where poor people go to these police stations, try to register their complaints, nobody registers. So imagine the atrocity taking place in Pakistan.
What we are witnessing here is a complete systemic dysfunction, yes, or rather the absence of a system altogether. Madam, in your opinion, what would you say that should be the first step that should be taken in order to address this situation? Of course, as a first step, we are already talking about it, which is something important. But what's beyond talking? Because this is something that is so serious, it is going to jeopardize our future and our generation. So it has to be more than just talk.
You know, I think it's very important to understand that nothing can be done in isolation. Even the legal system, which we are talking about right now, and its ineffectiveness, I think all this anger that has come up is entirely due to the fact that the legal system was so pathetic that it had not taken any steps. You have 12 cases in a year, just these. We are not talking about the 141 cases of abduction and assault that we record every year for Kasoor this is. So I think this anger is unfortunately due to the fact that nothing has been happening legally. When you talk about what shall we be doing, there's a whole vast, there are many things that have to be done. You have to be able to give people awareness about what it's all about, how children can be trapped, how they have to have very strong, the parents with children have to have very strong relationships to know where their children are, to be able to know about abuse and its effects, because the effects are then indicators if the child is being trapped. So there's a mass of awareness that has to be given to all the stakeholders. And that from there you can hope that this will at least reduce something within the situation as it is now. But then you have to make sure that your legal system is working without any pressure of any kind, because abuse takes place and continues to take place in a power structure. And the authorities have power. And if they don't function fairly and openly and transparently, then you will always find that this is happening.
Very tragic situation. As I was perusing the newspapers today, it came to light that the Supreme Court has overturned a rape and murder conviction due to lack of evidence. Now, that is another aspect of the legal issues that are inherent in the system. And therefore, when we talk about DNA evidence not being allowed as evidence in certain cases such as this, and then the provision of 4 witnesses to report that. So there's a lot of confusion within the legal framework. How do you think that can be addressed, and how important is it for that to be addressed?
Well, I think that the Constitution of Pakistan is enough for the protection of our religious and our legal interests as general. But as far as legislation is concerned, the judiciary is completely bound by the legislation created by the people sitting in the parliament and the legislative council. They're sitting there to make the laws. They get paid to make laws, which they do not. The judiciary, the police, they're there to enforce the laws, which they're not doing. So we need to understand that nobody is doing their work properly. As far as the DNA evidence and these sort of evidence not being enough sometimes in order to have a successful conviction is concerned, this case is going to be tried in the anti-terrorism court. And maybe it is being done through that channel because of the lack of legislation and protective laws, which might not be there in our normal legal system. So we need to understand that laws need to be created based on our people, not based on what England is doing or what the US is doing or what any other country is doing for that matter. We build buildings because we like them in some other country. That's what our ministers do. They make laws because they like them in some other country. We need public-based policy. This is affecting our public. Morality is being affected under the guise of this sort of action, and this can only be stopped when the lawmakers, the parliamentarians who I'm requesting to please put your head together once, regardless of who's in the opposition and who's in power and who wants to make a name for themselves, come up with solutions, laws, regulations which protect children, they should have a registry which registers such offenders. This man was caught the 8th time. He has molested or killed 7 other girls before this. Why wasn't he caught then? Why wasn't there any legislation created in 2015 when this whole Kasoor thing broke out in the world and Pakistan was shown as this beacon of rape in the world? You know, Kasoor became the rape capital of the world overnight just because of that story. And I was reading a Newsweek's report today on this same matter, and they were saying this is a city's honor which is under question now. And it is because of this fact, because our and sometimes, unfortunately, our legislators end up being involved in such sort of gangs. So we need to investigate this. This is not just on the top, this is deep inside, and we need a proper investigation task force. We just don't need a joint investigation task force. We need a proper task force only for this. We need a task force for child protection, because this is it's a real problem in Pakistan at the moment, not just in Punjab, not just in Balochistan, not just in KPK, it's everywhere. And we need to make people aware of this.
It's a worldwide phenomenon, actually.
To add something to it, as you say, internationally, there was somebody came from China, and he said there was a newspaper heading in China newspaper that Pakistan is not only a terrorist but a rapist as well. So that was something very I must say, shameful for us as Pakistanis. And besides, as we discussed, that first of all, there is not proper legislation. There is just child protection bill they talk about. And under that child protection legislation, there has to be a proper legislative framework in place. Institutional framework in place. Now, there is little bit, I must say, some signs of that type of institutional mechanisms, like we had in Punjab Child Protection and Welfare Bureau, we have in KP Child Protection and Welfare Commission, we have in Sindh Child Protection and Welfare Authorities, but those are all donor driven. They were supported by different donors like UNICEF and others, and for years and years millions of money was thrown into those institutions to make them effective, operational and working in terms of providing services to the concerned communities. But none of the interventions are mainstreamed. The moment donors funding comes out, stops, these things erase to the ground. So one of the important aspects which we want to highlight here is that in spite of all these child protection in Pakistan, there is not any such proper system available in Pakistan. There are scattered institutions like human rights, like education, like bureau, like other, but they are in isolation. They are not directly connected, and any case of child sexual abuse if arises, nothing such system available which can deal with such issues. So people have no option just to use influence, and people are now started discussing about that next time such thing happens, please don't go to police, go to media, collect a crowd, try to make it an issue through media. Maybe this way you will get justice. So imagine in Pakistan, there is no such system available to deal with child protection.
It's a very sad state of affairs, and I hope that those who are in power and watching our show are taking it very seriously. Ma'am, another thing that also needs to be said, and there's no subtle way of saying it, that most of the time, in fact 100% of these cases, are the perpetrators are men. That's one aspect to it. So then something seriously wrong in the upbringing of men. What is the problem over here?
Right.
Because it's not all men at the same time, but
Yeah.
a majority of them
Look, that
do happen to be
again
men.
is
I also want to
yeah,
add
sorry.
over here that in the US, a similar case just came up, and it was about this gymnastic doctor. He has been given 175 years in jail as a punishment for
Dr.
his...
Nasser.
That's right. So we haven't witnessed any of these phenomena or these kind of perpetrators been given such punishments for their crimes in our countries. When will that happen? What are the issues here that we need to really discuss?
Well, you see, then if we were talking about power structures, now men are very powerful in this country. That's a fact. Women and children are really down in the steps of power, if you want to call it. And that is in itself an extremely important reason why men are doing all this and are being allowed to get away with it even. Having said that, I have to also add that we give free legal aid, and we've had cases where death sentences have been pronounced. Of course, you have the appeal thing from high courts, but you have the appeal process and then it moves on maybe, but that has happened also, and we have seen that two major changes. One, that cases are being dealt with earlier. They're not taking the 6 and 7 years they used to, by and large, and that judges are getting more alert to the fact that this is a heinous crime, to the extent that we had a case where the mother forgave her son for having abused her granddaughter, but the judge said no, this will be he will be sentenced and this trial will be completed because this is a crime against society. So we do have that, but again, as Afshan says, these are pockets. We do not have a strengthened system by which we can ensure, as Sundas was saying, there should be a register for all abusers. There should be a mandatory reporting of anyone who's applying for a job near children, for instance, which is how that register then tallies it. And again, we have to come back to this, that in even this case, I think everybody is saying only one thing: who are the powers behind it? Because if we just logically think of it, one person in a 2-mile radius is able to pick up kids, disappear for 4 days, then murder and throw. There has to be more to it than that. So I think this is very important, that if this is looked into this time, and it doesn't matter who is involved, if they are punished, if it is brought up that, look, this powerful person has going to be punished for having supported this gang, I think it would make a vast difference, just as Zainab case has made a vast difference in bringing this up in such a big way.
And if we talk about the views of Zainab's mother, and she had this to say about the police. She said if the police had done their job, then Zainab would not have happened.
Yes,
and
yes.
she's right to a large extent.
Absolutely.
An average poor Pakistani, an average citizen is not even able to go to a police station to lodge a simple complaint. They just do not entertain that person unless he has some connections or he pays them bribes in order to have his case lodged, which might be genuine or not,
Or
but
not.
that's
That's
after
the
the
second
investigation.
point, yeah.
Let's talk about the quality of the police work and the
In that case
investigation.
also- in that case also they demanded 10,000.
I wouldn't just want to say a normal Pakistani, a normal citizen. I am a barrister. I have had numerous occasions where I've had to go to the police station in order to lodge an FIR against someone on behalf of my client, and they would not do it. And I can show them the CRPC, I can show them the Criminal Procedure Code, I can show them the sections in the Criminal Procedure Code which order them to register an FIR on the report of a crime. Doesn't matter who reports it. But they would tell you, no, we don't believe in CRPC, we will do our Kanuni Karwai. So not just a normal person, a lawyer like myself has such difficulty, and this was in Aptabad. So when I heard KPK's scheme about an online FIR and everyone telling me about that, I was like, the day that happens, I'll be the happiest human being in the world if it was so easy to launch an FIR. Secondly, those people are told by the people around them, the people in the Thana culture, they come up to them, tell them this will become a problem of honor. No one will get any of your other daughters married. This is made into a taboo. This is made into a matter of shame and family. So when you pressurize people like that, then it becomes much easier for the police to ignore them, because they might come for the first time, the second time, but once the police ignores them, they don't come back the third time. And unfortunately, that's what lawyers do. I am a female. I live in a patriarchal society. I have 4,000 lawyers in my bar. Most of them are men. And when we hear such things about, a woman being abused or harassed or assaulted or raped or murdered for that matter, they joke about it. Her husband must have done it. She must have talked too much. She must not have cooked the right food. What did
she wasn't dressed appropriately.
What did the 3-year-old girl in Nowshera do today, who was murdered today in Nowshera? She was 3. So she was assaulted and murdered.
Again, there's also no subtle way of asking this question, but I think it should be asked that all over the world, we do find that most of the people who are involved in abusing children also happen to be belonging to religious organizations. Many of the cases, as reported by the Catholic Church, has been in the limelight for many years for child abuse. And again, here also we have the situation where this particular man is related or associated with a particular religious outfit. Again, what is it with these religious types that it forces them, or they're the major culprits in such cases?
In 4 and 5, I was working with child-focused organization, and I was given this assignment of, going across the country, randomly select some districts in each province and just check the incidence of child sexual abuse. So I had selected like all types of institutions, which is private schools, government schools, the minority children, orphanages, care institutions, and madrasas. So that was a 5-6 months research, primary research. I did consultations all over the country, and the topmost list was the madrasas, where this child sexual abuse took place. There are various reasons to it. Number one, mostly what I see is people have to present some other face to the society by suppressing their natural, way of living. So a suppressed person, suppressed desires, not a normal way of life. Plus, if you see the madrasas in our country, all the power-stricken people and who can't afford to keep those children in their homes just due to food and education. They send those children to those madrasas, and nobody has that much power, authority to come and check what is happening. Secondly, there is denial in our society to accept this thing. So what happens is they are at the mercy of those madrasas, all those children. And if you see the, at that time when I saw the arrangement of those madrasas, there were not age brackets, like young could sleep with the older ones and something like that. So when you are having such arrangements without having any proper rules and regulations, definitely such things take place, easy access, nobody's there, nobody can question. And how a child can go and tell it to their parents, because they will slap him and send him back, that you are now property of madrasa, they are there to reform you. So that is one such very sad reality in Pakistan, and believe me, even I used to talk about it, everybody would tell me, somebody will really take you to task, you are putting yourself in high risk by mentioning these things, particularly about these madrasas and child institute abuse, and we could not even publish that research. And besides, even not that, our society is so much suppressed. Ma'am Manizeh can tell us that, like in those years when one of the organizations started this awareness program in schools on child protection, so that children can save themselves in case if it is known people, even a driver or any other person who can do this. So all this religious clergy and then government also supported them, and there was such a huge pressure to stop that thing, and that organization was almost banned, and it was taken so negatively. So in our society, the first thing is, talking about child sexual abuse even now is very much bad. It is taboo. It is thanks to media. Just like family planning was a taboo, and then it came on media, and then they started accepting it. Now, past few years, we have started talking about. Otherwise, at homes, nobody want to talk about it. In schools, nobody talk about it. People then relate it in a very negative way. And imagine the concerned structures in Pakistan. As we say, legislation is not there. Even when these things were happening since last year, I am totally voicing it out. There is not any such child protection policy, even in educational institutions, in residential care institutions, in government institutions. There has to be such structures in place, because if they are not there, how will people come to know that they have to bound to have those SOPs? So we have to see in our society to break these stereotypes, to break these culture norms, and to break this culture of silence, that people know in their hearts something has happened. Then another bad aspect to it is, in our society, the focus is never on the criminal. It is always on the victim. The girl gets raped. Nobody say somebody raped the girl. The boy or girl is sexually abused. Nobody say he or somebody else did it. So the entire attention, the stigma, and all the focus is on the girl.
And we can see that reflected in our judicial system, because the way the system is designed and geared is towards the protection of the criminals rather than apprehension of them.
Yeah, and believe me, that all these things will have to, we have to tackle them, in a very holistic way.
Sorry to cut you. I would just like to add, we need to understand a simple problem. Rape is not caused by women, whether it's their dress, whether the way they walk or talk or act. Rape is caused by men who want to rape. Absolutely. Whether they rape a woman, a girl, a young child, a boy, anyone. A rapist will rape anyone. Oh, that's his problem. That's not the girl's problem. That's not the child's problem. That's not the boy's problem. We make that problem about that child, about that child's honor, that child's respect, that girl's honor, that girl's respect. The day we leave that, and as far as the religious people are concerned, they're under this cloak, this guise of good intentions,
and
of being bona fide in all their actions. So the minute you question them, they have this, cover in front of them of religion, which they, the shield that they use very frivolously. So we need to understand the main issue, which is prevalent in our society. We can ban things, the PTA can do whatever they want.
I'm glad you mentioned banning, because that's my question from Madam Manizeh, that we also have a very large number of people who suggest that this is because of, co-education. What kind of an impact does segregation really have on the psyche of a normal, holistic human being? Because when we are brought up in a society where men and women are always segregated and are always told to stay away from each other, and it causes fahashi and such things, then what needs to be done here to correct the mental disbalance or imbalance that exists?
You see, unfortunately, this can go both ways. Your segregation is as bad, and your total freedom, as we are seeing now in the West, they are themselves aware that, you know, total freedom on this score has caused many other social issues. So both are bad. Now, the point is that can we find a middle way? Is there some way in which you keep your values and yet are able to interact? And I think there are many Muslim countries who show that, like Malaysia. I see the women are young, they're wearing modern dress, but they also have the hijab. And they all seem to be working, and they've all, you know, at perfect ease with both, both the sexes are at perfect ease. So there are middle ways, and I don't think either of the extremes are necessary. So we need to look at that, and we need to see models and what it is that and you know, when you empower women, then you are bringing them up and you are balancing that power structure. When you balance a power structure, then there can be equal amount of resistance. If I'm so weak, I cannot stand up to anybody. The minute I have a better footing, I can stand up to someone who's trying to harass me. So this is very important, and this is exactly what needs to be seen.
Well, we also have another aspect of this which is missing in our entire approach to that, and that is the scientific approach. When we're dealing with the criminal cases, we've seen that in civilized societies, they approach it in a very scientific way. There are psychological studies of the criminals and of the victims that are conducted. There are, you know, help groups that are there for them to, you know, get reintegrated into society. How important is that aspect, and why is it completely missing from our social discourse?
I think because mainly because of the fact that mental issues are considered to be again a taboo in our society.
Absolutely.
If you call someone mentally challenged, then they are you know, they're seen as not a part of that society. But when you know, we don't have therapists, we don't have psychologists, you know, treating patients openly. People don't tell each other if they're going to a psychiatrist or a therapist for that matter. So the reason it's lacking in our society is because firstly, it's a taboo. Secondly, the reason we don't look into this sort of an issue scientifically speaking is because we don't have the research. We don't have the data that we need in order to see that if this thing is prevalent, then where is it most prevalent? What kind of a demographic are these people coming from? Have they had something happen to them in the past which has led to this sort of a psychological problem that they have had? So this issue is not just one-sided. This is many facets, and the psychological facet of it is years and years of abuse can cause someone to become an abuser. We don't know where this gentleman, we have no idea about it, because all again we are hearing about is Zainab. We're not hearing about the gentleman who did such a heinous act, and he did it many times. So I absolutely believe that this is a very, very important issue, and we need to, like I said, have a special department in our law enforcement which is dedicated to child abuse, which has psychologists, which has people from the public, whether it's judges, teachers, any professors, people from the society who know this epidemic and who can help us, you know.
Unfortunately, I'm still going to be asking you this question because it has to do with the legal aspect to it. And in the court proceedings that have taken place, what has been reported in the media, the first question that the ATC judge, Mr. Sajid Ahmed, asked from the investigation officer was, where is his beard?
Yes.
How is that even a significant question?
Well, unfortunately, in Pakistan, we can't call for separation of church and state. You know, it is integrated into our society. If he has a beard, he must be telling the truth. He must be. We have associated numerous things with the beard. You know, so it's unfortunately it has no legal standing. It has no, like a few days before this, when the GIT was formed, Zainab's father had an issue with the head of the GIT being in Ahmedi.
No,
And
I want to come on to
yes,
the legal aspect of
yes.
it, because again, when we talk
It
about
has
the
no
polygraph,
legal-
when we talk about the polygraph test,
Yeah.
where it said that the suspect has confessed to his
Yes.
crime, we had another suspect who was caught earlier,
Yeah.
and he had also confessed to his crime, and it was only because of the DNA evidence which was
Yes,
not there
yes.
was he
They
absolved.
were able to make this, yes.
So
they were
now,
able to make
where
this
does that leave
distinction.
us? I mean, they can catch. I mean, if they caught
Anybody
me,
and
clear
Well,
Yes,
as
steps
far
tomorrow
as
and they said that you
legality,
did it.
as far as legality is concerned, confessions are always to be taken with a grain of salt. Confessions are not always non-pressurized. They could have had the previous gentleman in such a situation where they've caused him to confess.
But where does that leave the legal,
Yeah.
fraternity? Where does it leave the legality of the entire process when you have an individual who is already accepting the
Yeah.
crime under pressure,
Yes.
and then you find out that the man was innocent? What does that say about our entire legal system?
It
That's
says that
the
our
real
legal
discussion.
system is broken, and we had the same problem in the UK. I have studied in the UK and practiced in the UK, so I know they had this problem. So what they did is, in every single investigation room, they had 5 cameras where they could not be turned off in any point, at any point during the investigation. And before the police made an arrest, they could not keep a suspect under lockup without the consent of the suspect. So the thing is, it is not important that these things are happening until and unless we learn something from them.
Yeah.
We need to change the course of Pakistan's, not only our mentality, but also our legal system, and also the way we police. Our police is a scary being. The Pakistani police is a scary being which people are afraid of approaching. They don't see them as saviors or protectors or enforcers of the law. They see them as one of the parties who's going to make money out of their misery. So if that is the image that we are portraying to the people of Pakistan of the police, then the police even needs to look at themselves and see why these black sheeps in their departments are causing such a, when the police chief comes and says not everyone's the same, then why aren't they putting out the ones who are like that, who are giving them a bad name? Same with the parliamentarians. I said in the beginning, we need to have a self-cathartic moment as a society and see that why do we let these criminals, these heinous people stay in, live and prosper in our society. And when these sort of things come, I know we're talking about this now, we'll forget it probably in the next 2 weeks.
Another issue is about, when we are still talking about the legality of this entire process, what we have learned and what we've been told to, on what we've been taught to believe is innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
But in reality, it is the opposite. It is always guilty until proven innocent. If somebody is accused, then they have to prove their innocence rather than you trying to prove their guilt. That is what we've seen in practical.
Well, practically, no. As far as the legal system is concerned, when the case is presented in front of a judge, the burden of proof, which we call it, beyond all reasonable doubt, lies on the prosecution. They need to prove their case.
But that's not what we witness in reality.
Exactly.
It's the opposite.
Reason, because we don't have a Crown Prosecution Service. We have a legal prosecutor who will tell the other party which lawyers they need to bring in order to save their case.
Right.
So when you make a mockery of the legal system, when you make a joke of it, and you make it a reason or a vehicle to make profit out of it, then you would always have this question in your head that why do we have this problem in our system? So
Okay, I'll go further with...
And if you see the, but you can put me the question.
Yes, Madam Afshan, I wanted to ask you about this particular suspect, because he also is a member of a Nath Councils, and he has a card that is printed which says, please, he's soliciting clients for their Nath functions and so on and so forth. And he further went and told the police that he would always ask for God's forgiveness after committing his crimes. Now, what does that really say about the mental state of such an individual?
Actually, I think there are various mean, aspects to that. That is just one way of, maybe saving your image, but I'm literally, I want to laugh at such statements and such picture being portrayed.
I want to cry, actually.
Laugh in a heartful way, because you see, as we say now, after so many, I mean, months of all the incidents and now this particular incident, we know in Pakistan there is always a very local way of dealing with such cases by the local police. Now this DNA is and forensic is a very first example of having such just standalone incident. Police is always in the best picture what is happening. It is not something difficult for them, and it is not something hidden for them to find all such things. You know, there is a way of catching people. They catch few people, any suspect, and then the other relevant people slowly and gradually they start telling you the local happenings, who is related to whom, what are the connections, so they know everything. That is just one maybe situation was presented to divert the attention of public, because if you know you have any connections in Kasur, know people, there is lot more behind that. No. It is not something in isolation. He is just not one person. He is connected with lot more at the national and international
And when
level.
we're talking about Kasur, we cannot but not mention the case that came in 2015.
Yeah.
You know, there was the mobile
Actually,
phones with the videos of children being abused. What happened after that?
You know, I checked. Nothing. No, let me just tell you. I was constantly in connection with people who are living in Kasur, and even some police person also who is part of the JIT also. So those people who are living in Kasur, they said, you know, it is everything doesn't come on media. Everybody knows what is happening in Kasur, how this is being, you know, used, and this story is not a story of few people. This is connection, and when even those people were caught, those 300 cases we are talking about, all the concerned politicians were there who were, you know, running after them to get them free from police clutches. So story is not such that one person, he was a religious clergy and he had connections and now he's saying he has some unstable mind. It is not the case. The reality is far more bitter and serious, and that's why you know, we are concerned as human rights activists. You just took one case, you presented, this was a case, we are done with it, and story is off. Why story is off? Story has now started. So please, we don't divert us by just saying Zainab's criminal is now arrested. He will be, you know, his trial will be, you know, now conducted in those criminal court. Let's put it aside. Now tell us why it had been happening in the radius of 3.7 kilometer, and so many people got murdered. Then what about those 300 people? So please, that's what we want to request through that media, that we want a proper, complete, realistic picture just you know, brought before the public. So don't just throw such stories in the media and give us such. Now you see, there was a story, he was just arrested and he was this and that, and now you see we are talking about 37 international bank accounts and foreign currency and other connections.
Well, we'll leave that here because that's still, you know, something that we don't really know about the details of that. That is one particular individual who's making those claims. Until those are proven, we won't really comment on that. But Madam Manizeh, what is the work that Sahil has been involved in trying to protect children from these atrocities, and also what kind of awareness have you been able to create among those who are supposed to legislate and protect the children of our country?
You know, we have done a lot of awareness all across the country. We have, in all the 4 provinces, we have an office. We have got been down to the villages. We have child protection networks in villages, but it's still a drop in the ocean. And this must be remembered. And no NGO can possibly do everything.
Do you think that this Zainab case would be a watershed moment in the history of Pakistan, and it might perhaps do something for the protection of our future children, and something seriously will be done?
I'm hoping that, because now we are seeing a great movement that you know, the awareness must be given, which otherwise was not anybody's, didn't seem like anybody's concern. So yes, governments, all the provincial governments are moving into this, that, you know, how do we tell teachers, how do we tell parents, what are we going to tell our children? And we have information and tools for all these stakeholders.
Well, unfortunately, we'll leave it at that, ma'am, because we're completely out of time. And this is a debate and a conversation which will be hopefully happening in the coming days and weeks.
Hope so too.
And rehabilitation should be discussed in the coming programs, because prevention,
absolutely,
response, and then rehabilitation and reintegration.
Absolutely, Ji. All very important aspects of this. Thank you very much, ladies, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and in the end, you may derive your own conclusions from what you've heard. but there is no two ways about it, and there's no debate on the fact that our children need to be protected, and those whose jobs it is to protect them better wake up and do their jobs. Enough is enough. With that hope and on that note, it's goodbye.